So it all started with the backyard, which originally had that standard Florida grass, but the ground was really uneven. The previous owners had cut down a tree and just left the stump buried there, which created this raised mound in the middle of the yard, and everything sloped down to the sides. The first step was bringing in a bobcat that was just 48 inches wide because that was the only thing that could fit through the narrow pathway between the houses. I carefully drove it in with just half an inch's clearance on each side, and then started leveling the ground and removing that stump. You can imagine me driving the bobcat, hauling a big stump, not the original stump, but another one we cut down. I was driving back and forth for about 6 days, removing old dirt and hauling in materials. In one frame, you'll see me walking back to the house, and you can get a sense of how the ground looked after we removed the topsoil. Honestly, the video doesn't do justice to how rough it really was because I was just capturing everything on my Unify Protect cameras without planning to make a recording. There was this giant hump in the yard. I pulled up about 5 to 7 inches of ground in different spots and took out the stump. I also removed 3 other trees in the yard. For the smaller trees, I just hooked them up to the bobcat with a chain and yanked them out. And of course, every time I pulled up a stump, a bunch of bugs would come crawling out. After that, I brought in crushed stone. I laid down a fabric layer first to keep weeds down, then spread the crushed stone and compacted everything. I started with a manual compactor and then switched to a gas compactor, though I didn't get video of that part. I put another fabric layer on top, about an inch of sand before laying down the pavers, and here's where I made a mistake. I didn't use paver sand, and I ended up paying for that later. I used a laser level to grade everything so it would slope gently away from the house, installed drainage lines with corrugated pipes and catch basins, and then built a small retaining wall, about 18 to 20 feet long and 6 to 8 inches high. I poured the concrete myself. So as you can see, this is where the transformation really started for me, with the foundation for the retaining wall. Before I could make anything beautiful on top, I had to be absolutely sure the structure underneath was rock solid. I used 2x4s to form the base and spent a lot of time with the level, making sure everything was perfectly straight. You'll see it right there on the boards in the photos because betting that foundation right was the difference between a professional finish and something that would shift over time. Details tell the story of how many steps were happening behind the scenes. There's also a video showing the slope of the pavers on one side, and that really helps you see the natural grade I was dealing with. The yard wasn't flat, so every single adjustment mattered. Moving on to one of my favorite parts, the fire pit. At first, I thought I'd build it with 3 rows of stone, but once I started laying things out, I realized I really wanted that 4th row to give it more presence. Ended up being a clean 45-inch circle, perfectly centered. You can see the sand layer underneath, something I later regretted, because sand can behave unpredictably with heat and weather. But every part of this project was a learning curve that shaped the final design. Then came the flagstone delivery. Arizona-style flagstone, heavy stuff. We had an entire truckload delivered because this isn't the kind of material you casually toss in your car. The bobcat was a lifesaver for moving it around. Once it was on the ground, the entire yard looked like a giant puzzle. I had to piece it together stone by stone. The layout you see in those pictures was just the first attempt. I also added Indian River pebbles to bring some color and texture to the final look. Here you can see the flagstone before I cleaned them, and the pebbles I selected. They have some small translucent stones, and they're a perfect cover for the light. You can't see the light strip, but when you turn the lights on, they reflect and enhance the original light with a stone reflection. Here, I have a couple of good pictures from the early stage where the pebble stones were just starting to cover the light and the joints between the stones. You can still see some of the pebbles at that point, but I went back and added more gradually. I did that to make sure I had a good cover over the light so the strip stayed hidden while the light shined through the stones. Next, you'll see me placing the LED light strips. This part took patience because I wanted them to follow perfectly symmetrical paths. I spent a lot of time making sure everything was aligned. Even a small misalignment becomes obvious at night once the lights turn on. Later on, I had to bring out the chisel and hammer to trim some edges after the concrete was poured. Some corners needed old-fashioned manual correction, and in some areas where the concrete filled extra spaces, I used a 7-inch diamond cutting angular saw to shape the stone exactly the way it needed it. In another video, you'll see me moving back and forth to the power box. That's where I set up the 24-volt DC power supply for all the lights. The wiring was run through PVC before I placed the pavers and stones, so everything stayed hidden and clean. When I installed the IP69 box, I placed a small power strip inside and connected all the LED strips to the 24-volt supply. Reason I didn't use the adapters that come with the LED lights is simple. Those adapters are bulky, they generate a lot of heat, and they require 120 VAC or 220 VAC depending on the country. They would never fit inside a compact outdoor box, and if water got in, that could create a serious hazard. I wanted everything to run on 24-volt DC only, much safer for people, pets, and especially my cats. So everything was wired into one central low-voltage hub to keep it clean, safe, and balanced. As the footage continues, you'll see me checking angles, adjusting me. So here you can also see the little cat house. And yeah, I know the fence doesn't look great. That's actually my neighbor's fence, and he's working on replacing it. Haha. At that point, I realized I needed more light because I was using the Govee outdoor neon rope lights, the 32.8-foot RGBIC IP67 waterproof ones, and with only 32 feet, you can only go so far when you're trying to rub them between the stones. So as I was saying, as the footage continues, you'll see me checking angles, adjusting stones, and my cats wandering around like little supervisors. They're curious about everything. And yes, I had to wash all those pebbles before laying them down because they come dusty, and you want them looking clean and polished. When we got to the epoxy stage, that's when everything started to come together ritual thing. I poured it between the pavers first to lock the joints, and then I added a thin layer on top. The epoxy sealed everything and brought out the colors in the stone. Wadding it subtle was super satisfying. Then came one of the best moments of the entire project, the first fire pit test. Even though the yard wasn't finished, I lit it up and enjoyed it. The flames were perfect, no smoke, and it became a nightly ritual to celebrate the progress. Finally, when the lights came on at night, everything transformed, the flagstone glowed, the epoxy shimmered, the pebbles came alive with depth and color, and the fire pit became the centerpiece of the entire yard. All the leveling, wiring, chiseling, and planning suddenly made perfect sense. Now I'll let you enjoy the rest of the video. Thank you for watching. Sit back and take in the fire pit, the lighting, and this beautiful Florida November weather with me. I'm also planning a new upgrade inspired by ancient Roman engineering, something a little futuristic, but grounded in timeless golden principles. The idea is to redirect part of the fire pit's heat into the surrounding stones, so they naturally warm up. That way, when you're sitting on a cool evening, you can rest your feet on gently heated stone, cozy, comfortable, and completely natural. And if you ever want me to transform your backyard with hidden automation, futuristic features, and smart details, all while preserving a clean, classical, elegant look, I can do that. If you can imagine it, I can bring it to life. You can have a backyard like no one else, fully custom designed around your vision and built with the kind of craftsmanship and detail that makes it truly one of a kind.
Bye.